Hi, my name's Ali and I'd like to talk about the use of the film 10 Canoes within the algebra component of Stage 3 and 4 mathematics. The film, which is directed by Rolf de Heer, follows two stories in a traditional Indigenous narrative setup. So the stories are inspired by the director's trip to Arnhem Land, in which he listened to the Yolngu people's stories, and thus I think it's quite a relevant and real perspective of Indigenous history in regards to this particular tribe. The story that we're concerned with of the two is that of Ridjimiraril and Yirrupiril, which is one tribe's warning against desiring something that doesn't belong to you, which in itself is a good message, but I'd like to talk about a deeper, specific section in which Ridjimiraril must face the payback ceremony of the tribe of which he's killed a member. So, this presents the theme of peacekeeping and law between ancient Indigenous tribes, and thus embodies a deeper meaning than what would potentially be embodied within alternate scenes that you could choose from the film. This scene also highlights tribal differences. It's got two different tribes and they're quite different, and thus this dispels notions of a homogeneous Indigenous people. It doesn't present them as one blanket culture. So, this is used in the classroom by creating a visual representation, such as this one, to represent the balance between the two tribes and the story. And so you discuss, what happens when that balance is disturbed, when Ridjimiraril kills another member of another tribe. He then has to face the payback ceremony. So, do something to one side, you gotta do it to the other side to balance it all out. This is highly symbolic and easily connected to the algebraic notion of equality in equations, so each side of the equation and the equal sign in the middle. So this cements these ideas within the students' brains. It really is an easy to comprehend version of quite an abstract and complex, it's a complex notion to get your head around. In terms of social justice, this personalisation and discussion involved in the learning style allows for student discussion and understanding of each other's stories. So they come up with their own stories later and then they discuss them with each other and try to understand them. So this promotes an acceptance and use of alternative cultural perspectives within learning. So it becomes part of the student's knowledge and thus is really normalising this use of Indigenous culture and knowledge within everyday life, which it really is the goal. This then instills a confidence within the educators to keep using these Indigenous perspectives within the classroom, and again keep that cycle of the normalisation of these perspectives within our learning going. It's a really good cycle to be started by this simple representation. Along with this, a representation of Australian history is presented within the resource, where Indigenous occupation was not only harmonious, but existed. This challenges the sadly often taught white history of Australia, and even if subconsciously helps shift the balance of power in Australia back from white dominance to a hopefully more equal realm, in which students can acknowledge our Indigenous history, not only acknowledge, but that's where we started. That can be part of it. It won't be this extra add-on. An issue that I see with this excerpt would have to be the violent nature of the scene. However, with a brief explanation of the historical prevalence, just blanket historical prevalence of violence, perhaps in conjunction with an Indigenous workers' perspective on the issue, to avoid offence, students can establish the distinction between historical and current behaviours and not pick up a negative view on the culture itself. Overall, this is a highly relevant, meaningful and useful resource to use in the classroom that normalises the use of Indigenous perspective and touches upon the deeper-seated issue of Indigenous involvement in Australian history. Using this resource would be greatly beneficial for all students and teachers alike and help to create well-rounded students who understand the importance of Indigenous culture within the Australian culture today.